It is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to the Empowered Harmonizers. I want to zoom in and focus in on a very important topic that comes to relate to relationship with a covert narcissist. And that is really the impossibility of ever feeling or being accepted by them. When you have to overwork to gain their acceptance, to overwork and over-obligate yourself to gain their approval, where they then really covertly begin making all the decisions in your life for you. It is the embedding in the subconscious that becomes part of this paradigm or part of this concept, and really the struggle that ensues, the very silent, dormant, chronic struggle that ensues when you're in a relationship with a covert narcissist. Because there's not going to be always an outward communication. There's more a withholding or withdrawal of communication, a sense of secretiveness about this type of person. A covert narcissist is very much like a seed that's buried deep within the ground. They want to live out of a very secretive, silent, covert, stealth-like manner. In other words, where you're in an actual relationship with them or working with them, yet there is so much that lurks behind or beneath the surface that they do not want you to see. They do not want to share. They are not open. They are very secretive in nature. So there's really a feeling, a oftentimes intangible, but yet tense feeling, which is an energy in motion. There's an energy that surrounds these people that makes you feel like you want to work hard, as if it's your higher nature, your super ego, really your decision-making power, which then becomes entangled or ensnared with trying to pull that little ounce of approval or acknowledgement from this covert types of a narcissistic personality. And it becomes a very deep struggle in the fact that it tends to undergird or become underneath kind of foundational as part of someone's personality construct, trying to gain that little bit more from them. There's always something evasive about them. There's something always quite elusive. You're kind of in, but you're kind of out. They're kind of there, but they're kind of not. You feel like you want to gain that conversation, that communication, that guidance, but there's always a very secretive passivity about them. And hence there's a feeling that being accepted by them is impossible. So then what ends up doing, the mind ends up then flipping this or deciphering this as rejection. And there's a chronic feeling of being rejected and being rejectable, or then really what is known as like chronic shame, or the feeling that there is something about you that is inherently flawed. John Bradshaw, Healing the Shame That Binds You. So if this covert narcissist is a family member or a spouse or someone you have dated, someone who is not very generous with their compliments, with their approval, with their acknowledgement, there tends to then become a feeling of invisibility around them. You quite don't know where, you end and they begin. It's feeling like they are all pervasive or all-knowing or omnipotent. So they tend to have this very godlike personality to them, or charm. In other words, there's a sort of passivity that is very peaceful, very placid, but yet very secretive. And it's really what is dangerous or hurtful is what is lurking underneath the surface. And that's the feeling that oftentimes is this superiority, and that is, a superiority sense of self-importance, which meaning it lends them to a position where they are then apt to take advantage of and exploit the personality or the positive personality characteristics of those people who are around them. In other words, the people who then become enabling or codependent, doing all their dirty work, doing all the relationship work, carrying the burden for them. It's kind of like you feel like there's an abyss of neediness about them, yet it's not always obvious. In other words, they don't wear their heart on their sleeve, yet you're always kind of digging or wondering where that heart is. And so there becomes a real boundary violation, because this is how the covert narcissist then gains their quiet supply, as they then tend to keep dependence or a storehouse of dependence. In other words, people can't really be autonomous. They don't encourage an autonomy of those around them. They encourage a dependence. And as you might know, like is built in with our U.S. Constitution, your personality is to be, your constitution of your country is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's not the pursuit of who can you depend on or dependence. It is independence. And so with this, I really want to dive in and look at the polarity of dependence versus dependence, the Kabbalion, the study of the ancient Hamitic philosophy of the ancient Egypt and Greece. And one of their tenets is the topic of polarity. In other words, things exist in opposites, and they're at ends of a spectrum. And so, when we think of lack consciousness or indebtedness, the opposite of that is productivity, affluence, wealth, or abundance. So it's vibration or energy spinning at different ends of the pole. And when we talk about the impossibility of being accepted by the narcissist or the covert narcissist along these lines, is a feeling of indebtedness, or that there's chronically always something missing. There's a lack of positive self-regard or affluence or abundance or worthiness. And this is all sort of esoteric, but yet it is within our grasp when we enter into the quantum field, and then really the state of being mindful. The whole goal then to emerge and alchemize through the other side of this feeling of the impossibility of being accepted, it then really lends itself to the understanding that the covert narcissist is projecting their neediness onto you, and it's a detriment or a deficit of acknowledging and validating your own inherent healthy needs as a person on this earth, existing here in this earth plane, which has substance, which has atomic mass, which has belief systems, which oftentimes generate the consciousness with which you have. So when we talk about consciousness and this feeling of being accepted or rejected, there is an inherent need to be accepted or exist in the state of the tabula rasa, which is love, which is unconditional, which is just pure life or love energy. And when we think about the sun, or that that life-giving energy that is not conditional, it's just like an eternal flame. It is ongoing. When we think about love, it is really the absence of fear. It is that feeling of just generating a positive, warm, fuzzy feeling. When you think about love, you think of unconditional focus. And that focus in that state of being is just a state of existence. And the danger or the problem with the covert narcissist relationship is this imprinting of projection of their needs and not acknowledging or validating your needs and being okay with it. In other words, acknowledging that boundary space or your state of being. And so when we look at the Kabbalion and the idea of affluence and being accepted, affluence is really the culminating of positive energy and value. And so to resonate at that, one has to alchemize or transmute that situation. And it is to understand really the importance of consciousness, or what we talk about so much here, which is language. in understanding that this struggle is nothing more. It has nothing to do with you. You're not inherently flawed. It is a projection of the inequality of you to them in their, when you're around them. So in other words, the covert narcissist, by default, one is ignored, or your needs are ignored. They are passed over. They are taught to be shameful. They are avoided. And so it is this avoiding which then extinguishes that generative life energy. And that secretiveness is inherently what those people who are empathetic and sensitive, who stay with these people for a long period of time, in other words, who stay married to them, yet they're constantly having to overwork for them. Or they, this is somebody at your workplace who you never, they're always kind of tucked away in the corner and they're not very approachable, yet they seem to be having it all. It's the covert narcissist. They tend to emanate a superior sense of self-importance. And by very nature of that construct is the assumption, or when we kind of look at what the polar opposite of is, as is stated in the Kabbalion and those ancient Hermetic teachings of the founding, Trice Great and those philosophers, is the understanding that if you are around someone who has a pathological sense of superiority, then by default, all else is unequal or inferior. And that is unequivocally the projection of this superior energy. So in other words, it's like the whole gamut or spectrum of racial inequality. The Martin Luther King, it is, the civil rights movement, your human rights as a person to be treated with positive regard and to have your acknowledgement as a human and not a lesser life form. In other words, it is really what a lot of viewers have experienced as being treated as less than human or dehumanized. And to be treated as dehumanized means you're almost feeling unhuman, invisible, at really sort of almost what people might feel as an indentured servant or less than a human life form. In other words, they feel relegated to an animal. In other words, they feel shut away like a cloistered Cinderella, locked in the basement. While all the others are primping and prepping. If you haven't seen, Cinderella, you should definitely watch it. It's very metaphysical. But it's the idea that little Cinderella is like how really the covert narcissist will treat others as inferior, to live in the underground, to live in the invisible, to live in the cold, to live into the dark, not being able to see the light of day, not feeling, the glory or beauty of your personality, to have a prince or a princess come, riding up and to be there and to greet you and to embrace you as your soulmate, your twin flame. That person which, shares with you your deepest self and and shares with you your deepest desires. And oftentimes is a challenge for you to fulfill those. So the covert narcissist, if you are struggling for acceptance and approval and validation, it is going to be an impossible feat. It is impossible to share that feeling of equality or balance or positive regard or equality, equal playing field. You're always going to feel underneath like a stratum or what is in India, which is like a caste system. Those people who are in a relationship with a covert narcissist, they'll feel like they're in a relation of like a caste system. Like, here's some people who are, the higher caste with the knowledge, access to the money, the education, the good food, and all else are relegated to bathe in the dirt, eat what they can scrounge up, live in the poorest of shanty-like conditions, and to be devoid or not have access to education and betterment of self, and you're born and you can never rise up. So it's very much like the covert narcissist really tries to keep this as an inoperative or secretive sense about them. And the covert narcissist will very rarely then let you see who they truly are. In fact, these are like the real Scorpios of the zodiac, where they have very much an outer shell, and you never really know what is going on underneath, and that is like the private self versus the public self. And it is always pining to know or feeling like you have been, not acknowledged, not validated, and you need to be in that mindfulness state to then understand that you then have choices to surround yourself with others who will radiate and reflect back to you the magnificence of who you are, and that polar opposite then of affluence and feeling of equality and balance, and then rising up of your energy, which then you become more energy than matter when you enter into that quantum field that we talk about here on the channel, which is acknowledging that you, by virtue of your being, you have access to that source energy. It is what is radiating through your cells. Obviously, we talk here about the magnificence and the miracle of life. It's realizing that you have choices and options and then need to self-validate. You need to come out from underneath really that rock of being ignored. Really, when we talk about living under a rock, it's really the resultant of the hiding or the isolation that is then part of the dehumanized. We think of that less than human existence that people then are relegated to. And so if you've felt this, realize that, and a lot of people feel I am scarred, or, it's so much that it's more so that you are then coming into closer intimate contact with that vibration, that polar opposite. Begin to embrace and acknowledge and say, I love to vibrate at the opposite of that ignoring. I then love to be in a conscious, aware state. And it's embracing that aware state where you are conscious and aware and then more in touch with your human rights. And you have to become like an activist. Those who, if you watch the recent on Netflix, President Obama in the country of the United States was one of the first interviewees by David Letterman, and he talks about the right for those who are African American to gain the right to vote and to not have the lack of civil rights, the lack of rights in their life, where hitherto that they were treated as inferior. So very much the relationship with a covert narcissist is very much like that. It's like feeling a sense of lack or violation of your human or civil rights. And there becomes this inequality of your lifestyle or your livelihood or your existence because you're relegated to being less than. And that can really be an experience through all relationships with the cluster B. And I think that this is a really huge discovery that you have to become an activist really for yourself. You really have to have that groundbreaking moment within yourself to say, OMG, I have been violated at the very core of my being, and I have endured long enough. It is time for me to rise up. It is time for me to hearken and take back my rights as a human being and to feel human again, what it is to be human, what it is to be love, what it is to be love, what it is to give and receive love, and to be as a complete and whole human being, and not kind of a carved out gestalt, wounded, less than person, and to own your rights to affluence, prosperity, and influence, and to be in that affluent state, which is vibrating at the other end of that spectrum. If you can imagine like a pole, like a vibrating energetic pole, like, the axiom of north and south. South is like, weight, or whatever lack of lack of prosperity, if you want to think of that at the bottom, and then vibrating at the top is affluence and influence, and the energy and the feeling that you have the right to all the prosperity and the energy that you give as an individual. It's the pulling out. It's not the pressuring on, which oftentimes is like the counter. It's the counteraction to what the covert narcissist has imprinted within you, if that makes any sense. And I know that this is really deep and advanced stuff, but it is my goal and my life mission to help those people rise up and to realize that you are not the projection. Your life and your identity is not the projection of the negativity or lack that oftentimes was imbued on you as the less than, the Cinderella in the basement. It's really true that you are meant to rise up the stairs, come to the top floor, come to the third floor, come to the top of the mountain and say, this, I have a right to life. I have the right to love. I have the right to that positive energy in that really quantum field, which then gives you the opportunity to make choices and decisions, because life with a covert narcissist can be very limiting in that they are then limit the belief that you have. Your biology of belief is then corrupted. It's like the energy that is, part of your belief system is part of self-limitation. In other words, the law of the lid. You cannot rise up. It's like having a constant invisible pressure. But yet when you realize there is no pressure, pressure is not written on the ceiling. You are not living underneath them. You are not living underneath anything. In fact, it is your birthright to grow and expand like this Aurealis flower here that is standing up, and it's like this bulb. It's like a horn. It's like a horn of an angel, hearkening out. Glory to you and glory to your life and glory to your abundance, and to live in the state of consciousness or awareness. So what I'm hearkening out to you here, for your life to come full circle and then realize the power of your consciousness and your language and your ability of free will to then take this knowledge, which knowledge is power, and then to understand that you have creative powers. That's the whole goal, that you are to see that has been blindsided or darkened over you when you're in a relationship with these types, is that they don't want you to see your light. They don't want you to see the light. They don't want you to feel the light. They want you to see their needs, and that you are then to be a copy of an entity that is to satisfy their needs. So there becomes this enabling or chained like trauma bond quality to the relationship. It's like an invisible slavery. But yet you have the ability to dissolve those chains with your higher power, your guardian angel, your stamina, those people, the empowered harmonizers that are tuning in and day out to get this knowledge and to take action and to get your calendar out, which we have, and to schedule your days in awareness. When you love life, life will love you back. So it's reclaiming your inner power and your right to life and love as a full, human being. And this is the Karma Planner by Blush Dance, blushdance.com. And you can get these at your Barnes and Nobles. And I know we have a lot of international viewers, and I know people want me to put the link. I'm not going to put links down. I want you to be active and to search this out. This is by brushdance.com. And I want you to really, really get serious and command, because you do have a higher consciousness, you do have a higher self, you do have guides who guide you, spirit guides, energy guides who see a vision for you and are not keeping you stuck in that fear state, that fight or flight state, where you are always in fear that you are not enough. And I want you to get to know your guides, and I will let you know that I have a very strong spirit guide who I have encountered in my life, who has been with me since birth, and who has shown me so much about my infancy, and who has showed me what I've been through, and has showed me that he has been there to carry me, but he watches very strongly over me, and he knows, and he stood very strong with me through my struggles, which have been many and profound, which have cultivated to who I am today, and have spurred me on. But this is my life mission, which, yes, people have asked me about the karmic coming through, which has drawn these relationships, and we will definitely address that. And yes, it is something I believe that that there are soul groups which you then travel through time and space, which you're a part of. This energy, which is consciousness, which has landed you here. And furthermore, but I want you to know that when you take a commitment and you are serious, then life gets serious with you to alchemize and bring you abundance, financial abundance, professional abundance, relationship abundance, health abundance, vibrating at your highest peak, becoming who that higher guide and your higher template is wanting you to be, breaking through the corruption, not being part of the corruption or the disappointing world, which often keeps people hidden and stuck and angry, is because they are disappointed at the world at large. And oftentimes it is this anger and feeling of violation that keeps people stuck. But when you get your recovery journal and you get an appointment book and you begin to schedule in advance your recovery date from Thursday from 3 to 5, I am taking my inner recovered self out, my inner healed, my higher self out. I'm taking out my inner physician, my inner healer, my inner artist, my inner handyman, my inner healed self, higher self out to do what that higher self wants to do, and to surround it and indulge it in an environment where it can receive. And to get in touch with those questions, which I know I've received a lot of inquiries, can I please provide more questions to help open up that human right, which you have to hear that inner voice. It is knowing, it is knowing and then walking that, walking the walk. And I will have you know that that is your call, and that is your call to life, that is your call to spirit. But you must begin to live in that visionary mode and elicit, start to get that energy coming from your prefrontal cortex, which has decision-making power and the power of vision working for you rather than being stuck in the lower vibrations and that sort of unformed or underdeveloped or unlived life when you're in a relationship with a covert narcissist who basically wants you to hide in oblivion, be the invisible, be the unheard, live the unspoken life, live the unlived life. That is the goal, is to alchemize and transmute and really step away from that very energy which you had encountered in the first place. And to separate and distinguish and really sort of de-identify with that silent, non-existent energy, and to come through into really who you are meant to be on all levels. It is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.